Hi, this is Larry Christensen. We're going to be talking gambits in this video. And we're going to start with the Gorring gambit. That arises from the double king pawn. The Gorring gambit is related to the famous Danish gambit, where white sacrifices two pawns. Also has a little gioco piano, Italian game characteristics, and some Scotch game characteristics. Well, let's get right to it. And like most gambits, if not all gambits, the Gorring gambit with 4c3 here is it's an attempt by white to offer material to gain time. Time being deployment, quick mobilization of his forces, deployment of his forces. And before talking a bit about the concrete variations of this gambit, Black does have he can refuse the gambit with d5, something that suits very conservative players. People don't want to take chances. This is a pretty solid line for Black. I'll give the best moves, first 7, 8 moves, and then leave that to the student. After d5, white should play e takes d5, queen takes d5, c takes d4. Now Black should pin this knight on f3. White breaks the pin with bishop e2. Black checks on b4. White puts the knight in the way, correct move. And now there's the simplifying move invented by Capablanca. Bishop takes f3, bishop takes f3, queen c4. That stops white from castling by controlling the f1 square. And then white, you can play very conservatively with bishop takes knight check, or you can try the more adventurous queen b3. And queen b3 is the latest word on that. This video really doesn't allow for, we don't have time to discuss this in detail. Recent indications show that white has a fairly promising position after queen b3. Okay, let's go back to our main line, the Gorring gambit. Been around a long time. And just one more point, Black can also decline the gambit with d3. That's a bit less sensible than d5 after bishop takes d3. White should get a nice game. Hard for Black to develop his king-bishop successfully. If he plays d6, then his bishop gets hemmed in. If he plays an early bishop c5, that may allow a profitable spike attack against that bishop with b4. And followed up by a4, or perhaps knight bd2 first, and then an a4 move. And if Black plays c5, white can harass that bishop with knight c4. Typical maneuver in such positions. Okay, let's go back to the position after c3, the pawn offer. And as they say, the only way to refute a gambit is to accept it. And Black plays d takes c3. And white now can actually offer yet another pawn with bishop c4, inviting Black to take on b2. And then after bishop takes b2, white has two very beautifully placed bishops aimed dagger-like at the Black king side. Not easy for Black to get developed. If he plays bishop b4 check, that's probably his best move. White can play knight c3. Here Black would then most likely play d6 to inhibit an e4, e5 push. And after d6, one very interesting mode of attack, or attacking formation, would be to play queen c2, knight f6, and then castles, which kills two birds with one stone. It breaks Black's pin of the knight on c3, and now that knight is just itching to jump to some square like d5, and it puts the rook opposite the Black queen. Always a good rooks love to be on the opposite end of a file with the superior queen. And Black feels some discomfort in this line. pretty interesting attacking line. The king, white king, even though it's been denuded of pawn cover, has ample protection afforded by the knight, the two bishops, and the queen. Okay, that's a fun line to play. I definitely recommend it. But our main focus of this video will be the main line, Scotch. And that is knight takes c3. It's a modest little gambit. It's just one pawn. White's now got both bishops can develop instantly. He's got both knights out, and he's got a pawn center, more control of the center. So he's got a space advantage and a time advantage at the moment. And black, so black, time is of the essence for black. So how does black respond here? Well, if he plays knight f6 is one consideration here. That does give white some interesting ideas, like for instance e4, e5 is conceivable, or perhaps a simple solid development with bishop c4. And black, one continuation I have seen is either bishop c5 here or bishop b4. And after let's say bishop c5, then white can play e5. Now he definitely attacks. Black, if he plays knight g4, he's inviting one of these cheap tricks on f7. Of course, that's black's Achilles heel in the Scotch, and in many romantic openings, bishop f7, we see that constant source of worry and anxiety for black. Bishop takes f7, check, king takes f7, queen d5, check, and followed by queen takes bishop. White gets a great game. He's got his pawn back. Black's lost the right to castle. So one thing to remember, though, in open games, thrust is typically met by counter thrust. So e5, black can try d5. And here, though, this should be unsuccessful. White can play pawn takes f6, pawn takes bishop, queen takes queen check, knight takes queen, and now pawn takes g7. And that pawn on g7 is a major thorn in black's side. So rook g8, bishop h6, we can just see, followed by castles long, black's going to have his hands full getting his pieces out, getting his king to safety, and maintaining some sort of material balance. So that black has to worry about that e4, e5 thrust continually in the scoring gambit. So let's go back a little bit to our basic position. And most popular continuation here for black is to play bishop b4. And I should mention moves like bishop e7 can lead to disaster for black. Early bishop e7s, and white can then play bishop c4. Now again, if black plays knight f6, this e5 move is very painful. It's very hard for black to meet. And if he plays d6, then whoops, queen b3 focuses on f7. How does he respond? Knight h6 isn't viable because the bishop takes h6. So here f7 is going to fall, or something worse, and black's in bad shape. So the best move, undoubtedly, is for black is to play bishop b4. Solid move. He's not inviting trouble from e4, e5. It pins that active knight on c3. And white now, of course, he develops not the bishop to e2, d3, but of course to the stellar diagonal bishop c4, our classic double king pawn diagonal for the light squared bishop. Honing in on our favorite target, the f7 pawn. And again, if knight f6, we like that e5 stuff coming down on him. And again, the counter thrust d5. This is an old story. E takes f6, d takes c4, takes, knight takes, pawn takes g7, rook g8, bishop h6. Black's suffering. Game after game, black has received he's had to wave the white flag. So we can already see now, when in doubt, we're going to always play, if we can allowed to play e4, e5, we didn't do it. So that's already happening in example after example. So what does he do? What should black do? Well, probably play d6, or ideally he should play bishop takes c3 check right away. That's the best move. Actually, d6 right away. White has this interesting option of playing queen b3. Again, attacking our favorite square at f7. And if black throws in bishop takes c3, white has this nice little option of queen takes c3 coming down on the g7 pawn. This gives white fair to middling attacking chances. Okay. So, after bishop b4, bishop c4, this bishop takes c3 check is black's most reliable continuation. White takes, and now he plays d6. And here, quite a number of possibilities here for white, including our old friend queen b3. Never get tired of attacking f7. If he plays queen d7, we can just really go all out on f7. Knight g5. Attacking f7. If black meets the threat with a threat of his own, and with knight e5, then white can play bishop b5, c6, and then f4. Gives pretty good value. C takes b5, f takes e5. Suddenly black notices after he takes, white has a serious concentration of force on that f7 pawn after castles. And white also has other useful options, including bishop a3, that depriving black the right to castle. This is more than a little dangerous. A better move after queen b3 for black, to queen d7, bishop c, after knight g5 is to play knight d8. He better play solidly, or knight h6 also is a move. Knight d8 though is pretty darn solid. Black wishes to quickly get that knight out of there. White might play now f4 to get a pawn front going, and he gets kicked. He goes back to f3. Pretty fair attacking chances here for white too. Okay, that's definitely a line to consider. Another way to play for white, and this video is mainly about ideas, is just to castle directly. Get the king out of danger, safely tucked away now, and also the rook on f1 might join the fun. And black develops knight f6. This would be a rotten square. Knight ge7. I think already black's in major hot water after knight g5, and then if castles, queen h5 schools out. No defense to f7 and h7. So knight ge7 typically is a very bad square for the knight, and much better on f6, even risking the e4, e5 stuff, which happens to be white's main line here, e5. And now, if black plays pawn takes pawn, white has a number of options, including queen b3, and the most reliable move, knight g5. Attacking f7. Well, black castles. He safely got his king castled. f7 seems secure enough, but now white plays bishop a3. And that rook is frozen to f8. He can't move that rook. Trading queens looks like his best option. And after rook takes d1, he should surrender the exchange, bishop f5. Black does have two good pawns for it. I would say, however, after bishop takes f8, rook takes f8, rook fe1. If I had to choose sides here, I would take white, based on his better placed pieces, pressure against e5, and pressure against f7. no less than Mikhail Tal has tried to defend this line with black and did not succeed. Mikhail Tal, world champion, 1960-61. Let's go back to our position after e5. And there, black's most reliable continuation is knight takes pawn. And then white plays knight takes and pawn takes, and now he plays queen b3, attacking that old friend on f7. And again, if castles, we've seen this before, bishop a3, f7 is going to fall, and this is even better for white than that last line, that endgame. Now you have a middle game, and white's going to win the exchange. Plus, he's got bonus pressure on b7. Not to mention e5 is going to be weak. Rook's going, follow the dots. You put the rooks on the center files. It's made for those rooks. Okay, let's go back. So castles is not playable. He should play queen e7, and that brings us now to the situation after bishop a3. Good move. Black blocks with c5 as white. What does white do? Well, now he plays bishop b5 check. And here black, if he plays knight d7, let's say he played knight d7. Well, white would have certain options. The most obvious move is to create pressure against the knight on d7, and if black castles, well, when in doubt, centralize. Queen d5. I just know that's got to be very strong for white. Black's almost paralyzed here. If the knight moves, we have queen takes c5, winning the house, basically. Rook d8 just walks into a horrendous pin. Bishop takes c5. Black is not going to be around long here either, so he's in big trouble. Queen d5. We're always looking to centralize our queens in the mid to late middle game. Standard operating procedure. Early middle game opening, generally speaking, queen, let's stay back unless you have a really good reason. Okay. Back we go to our position after bishop b5 check. Black should instead play bishop d7, and then white plays bishop takes, knight takes d7. Again, oh yes, I should mention now, knight takes d7 is the only move, because queen takes d7, bishop takes, black has lost the right to castle. And I should show you a very neat trick. Let's say black plays knight e4, threatening the bishop, and a fork, or supposedly a fork. Well, white just calmly retreats the bishop. Black forks. White plays queen b4. Black gobbles the rook. But then white plays rook d1. Very nice of the knight here to provide, to get in the way of a potential check. But of course, now queen takes rook. We have checkmate on e7. Black has to move the queen and guard c7. The most logical continuation, really doesn't matter. Queen c7 leads to the same thing. Queen e6, then white crashes with queen b5 check. Queen c6, queen takes e5 check. Queen e6, queen takes g7, and black can resign. He's obliterated. Which brings us back to our position. The position of interest after bishop b5 check, knight d7, which I hope you can all remember. Bishop d7, yeah, rook a d1 has been played, but it probably transposes and rook f d1, because black's going to castle anyway. He's not going to take on d7. He'll castle. And by the way, this will transpose after bishop takes d7, lead the same thing. So we'll actually use this as the main line. Takes, knight takes, queen takes pawn. White's got one pawn back. Black castles. And now at rook a or rook f d1, it doesn't matter too much. Applying a pin. to the knight on d7, and here I believe black holds quite comfortably after rook a d8. Well, fairly, not that comfortably, because now white can take that a7 pawn. Maintaining the pin, black can get his queen out of there with queen e6. And white can actually win in the second pawn. Why not? Bishop takes c5. That's a nice, looks like a reasonable attempt. Or maybe he can play a quieter move. h3 looks like a possibility as well. And there are chances for both. Well, white certainly can't. I don't think he should lose this. He can only win it. Black has his hands full. And just offhand, maybe he doesn't have to play h3. He can play a move like queen c7. Looks interesting. And black has his hands full. Probably queen a6. I'm ad-libbing now, but I think this is a good move, only move for black. And if bishop takes c5, black hangs in there with rook c8. Queen takes knight, and rook takes bishop. And white's a pawn up, but they're broken up pawns. Black has an uphill struggle. Anyway, that should do it for regarding our Scotch Gorring Gambit segment. This is Larry Christensen, and now we'll move on to our next gambit of interest, and that is the Black Mardemer. That's for you d4 players. So thank you, and let's move on.